My name is Marilyn. I am 72 years old, and I carry on my shoulders a lifetime of silences kept, of choices made for love, and some pains that not even time could erase. I was a mother, a wife, a caregiver, a counselor, and when I needed it, I was also the only one left to hold what was left of our family. But tell me something. What would you do if your grandson, a child of only 7 years old, held your hand in the middle of his father's wedding and say, wow, with eyes full of fear, Grandma, and I did healed, what did you do? Look under the table. Maybe you think that it can't mean anything. Maybe you think it's just a child's fantasy. I thought so too. But what I saw there, it took my breath away, and it changed everything. If you've ever felt like there's something wrong going on, even when everyone else smiles and pretends everything is fine, then you will understand what went through me that day. Today I'm going to tell you what I found under that table, and how it revealed a truth that was hidden right before our eyes. I was invited to the wedding, but I was not received from the heart. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. Nothing prepared me for what I experienced in that hall. The moment my grandson, Noah, shook my hand and whispered, "No, Grandma, that's your candidate, and I. You didn't see what's under the table, did you?" And why? Something inside me snapped. At the same time, no, the world stopped. The hall was full of flowers, laughter, clinking glasses, but I felt the blood run cold. I lowered myself slowly, without making a sound. Oh, and when I got up again, I was no longer the same, because what I saw down there, it revealed something that a grandmother should never discover. Before I continue, I'm on down. Did I so got key? If you've ever gone through some pain that no one has seen, if you've ever carried a heavy silence in your chest while smiling on the outside, I wanted to ask you something from the bottom of your heart. Leave your like here and subscribe to the channel. This is more than a button. It's a gesture that shows me that I'm not alone telling this story, that there are people on the other side who understand what it is to keep a difficult truth in their chest. Thank you for listening to me. Now I can start. I live in a simple little house, one of those with a wooden porch and a crooked white picket fence, in the James Island neighborhood here in Charleston. It always smells of lavender and fresh coffee around here, because I like to keep everything in order, and because it helps me not to overthink it. I wake up early, no time, city south, cotton south oil. Well, before the sun rises, turn the kitchen light and put the kettle on the fire. And build serum. The silence of the mornings is my favorite moment. That's when I can talk quietly with God, wet and still, and be thankful that I am still standing, unwound, even after so much. My garden is small, but it is my pride. I grow roses, jasmine, and lavender. Richard, my late husband, said that I had a good hand for everything that was born with roots. We were married for 41 years, and even though he's long gone, I still find myself talking to him out loud when I'm alone tending to the plants. Something of someone who loved very much. I think he was patient, hard-working, and made me laugh at the nonsense of life. Richard was never one for many hugs, but he looked at me as if to say, "I'm here," and that was always enough. My son, what a cow, Daniel, grew up in this same house. I slept in the back room, where I now keep Noah's toys. When Daniel married Emily, it was like having a daughter. Shokenihon. Emily was sweet, respectful, and called me Avar with a naturalness that I still miss today. Their lives looked promising. I took care of Noah while they worked, prepared dinner, and was happy just to hear his footsteps running from one side to the other. But happiness is a skittish animal, isn't it? When we realize it, it has already slipped through the cracks of routine. The day I lost Emily was the day I really felt what silence is like screaming inside the house. She was in a car accident on a rainy afternoon, going to get a birthday present for her own son. It was so sudden that no one knew how to react. Daniel closed himself off, locked himself in on himself. I held on. How? For me and Noah. He was only 4 years old. Wild found. And started calling me Mom for a while, until he understood that she wasn't coming back. Since then, he and I have become a duo. He comes to my house every weekend. He likes to play with his father's wooden train, eat my oatmeal cookies, and sleep clinging to my arm. Sometimes he wakes up scared, calling for his mother, and I stand there in silence, smoothing his hair, praying softly that God will let me live long enough to see that boy grow up with his heart at peace. The neighborhood knows me as Mrs. Marilyn, the kind lady who offers apple pie at Christmas and tends to others' plants when they travel. But no one imagines how much my chest has already weighed in silence. I've never been one to complain. I learned early on that the words that hurt the most are the ones we never say. That week before the wedding, Daniel showed up at home to drop Noah off. I prepared a pie. The Alchil, sounds a creature that one, as always, and tried to strike up a conversation. Now, I wanted to know about the ceremony, and I saw they about that Vanessa, about the new life he seemed to be building. He replied with short sentences, looking away. He said that the wedding would be on Saturday, in a beautiful place, something simple, and that the invitation would arrive by email. By email, after everything we have experienced, not even a call. But I swallowed, smiled, and thanked him. It wasn't the first time he left me out of decisions, and I've learned not to beg for places where I am not wanted. I was content to put Noah's best clothes, prepare his backpack with care, and ask God for him to be happy, even if far from me. No. Sometimes we pretend not to feel it, just so we don't lose the little that is left. That's when I want to ask you, have you also felt left out by someone you raised with all the love in the world? Someone who has forgotten who held their hand on the hardest nights? If you've experienced something like this, comment here with a "I've lived it" or A, it's true. Because as much as we endure it in silence, it hurts just the same. That night, after Noah slept, I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at him. I thought about Emily, how much she trusted me. Well, I don't know how she trusted me. And I made a silent promise. No matter what, nay, I would protect that boy until the last of my days. But I had no idea what was about to happen, because the wedding day has arrived. Now, steps, and even with all the pain hidden behind my calm smile, I didn't turn to you and curse. I understood. Nothing prepared me for what I found in that room. Nothing. And it was Noah who warned me. He was the one who saw it first. He was the one who saved me. But do you know what he told me? Do you know what that innocent child whispered in my ear, with his eyes full of fear? That's what I need to tell you about now. The invitation arrived on a sultry Thursday afternoon, inside a white envelope. No beauty sets, without smell, tune and cow, without emotion, without even my name written by hand. Marilyn Thompson typed on a sticker. The sender was one of those cold, fraught online event sites. I opened it slowly, sitting in my rocking chair, with Noah playing on the living room carpet. I read everything twice, trying to find a little affection there, a piece of our history. But it was just a list of information. Date, time, time, recommended outfits, and her name. Vanessa Lawrence. Daniel and Vanessa invite you to celebrate love. 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 I faced that word as if looking at an old photograph and not recognizing anyone else in the image. The worst thing is that I wasn't even surprised. I only felt that old bitter taste of exclusion that comes disguised as politeness. No link, no visits, not even an invitation from the mouth of his own son. Just a formality thrown into the mailbox, like someone delivering a supermarket brochure. I remember when Daniel first came up with that name. Vanessa. No, they got planet, well, it is serum. Is that it? In a quick conversation, while picking up Noah here at home, I asked her where she was from, what she did for a living. He replied dryly, she is a lawyer, Nantucket, from Mount Pleasant, as if that said it all. Then he didn't say anything else. I never saw the two together. And you, better watch it, so the soup. I never received a visitor, a dinner, pound, and dairy, not down, a coffee, pen, not even a nod from afar. And now, marriage, from the date on the invitation, I saw that it was only 2 weeks away. It was too much of a hurry, or too much urgency. And in this case, urgency usually has another name, interest. But I kept silent. Not out of cowardice, but out of respect for myself. At this point in my life, I learned that some absences speak too loudly. I commented to my friend Ethel, one of the few people who still sits with me for coffee without looking at her cell phone all the time. She is also a widow. He also has children who only remember that it exists when they need family income or borrowed money. When I told her about the invitation, then Kyle, She was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Nowadays, nice, being a mother is being tolerated until further notice." We both laughed, but it was that tired laugh of someone who has cried about it before. Ethel looked at me and said, "Ah, will you?" I replied, "Meow, I know, Sidcherry, I'd circle calm. If it were only for me. No, but for Noah. Wayne, I am going. He needs to see that he still has somewhere to lean on." Wow, don't know. I spent the next few days trying to choose an outfit. Nothing felt right. Neither beautiful nor ugly. All soulless. Until I found a light blue dress that I wore to Noah's christening. I put it on. I about neonate. Looked in the mirror. Wow. Adjusted the daisy brooch Richard gave me on our last birthday, and said to myself, "What? You don't go for them. You go for yourself." But don't think my heart was at ease. There was something about that ceremony that bothered me before it even started. Something I couldn't name, but I felt it in my body. It was as if my chest knew what my eyes had not yet seen. And I was right, because when I arrived at that resort, what I found there was more than coldness. It was a warning. And do you know what they said to me as soon as I set foot in that place? Do you know how they made me feel? Even before I saw the bride's face? That's what you're going to understand now. On the wedding day, I woke up early. I passed the coffee with trembling hands, trying to convince my heart that it was just another family event. I calmly dressed up, and I put on the same light blue dress I had separated, adjusted the daisy brooch on my chest, and put on a discreet lipstick. I waited until the last minute for some call. They were on our way. A well pick you up, but nothing. I took a taxi by myself. Where's you? The driver was a quiet boy, and on the way to the Magnolia Gardens resort. I looked out the window and silently asked myself, when did I stop being a priority in my son's life? When we arrived. The gate was decorated with white flowers and a huge sign with their names, Daniel and Vanessa. The guests paraded as if it were a red carpet. Designer dresses, well-groomed hair, perfumes that arrived before the bodies. I went down slowly, feeling that this place was too beautiful for me, or maybe it was too cold. An employee of the place approached and asked me aloud, "Well, Dean, are you on the bright side?" I shook my head and replied, in the groom's mother. Why did you He smiled, embarrassedly, as if he didn't expect this answer, and pointed to the hall. I would try. I walked in slowly, looking around, looking for some familiar face. The decor was elegant, yes, but it had no soul. Everything seemed made for the photo, not for memory. I looked for my name on the tables, and it took me a while to find it. Table 12, and Sergio, I did here. At the back, near the kitchen door, behind a pillar. The family table was out front. Oh, of course, full of cousins, friends of the bride, fake smiles, and toasts in advance. My name, there at table 12, Nira, was next to a couple of strangers and Noah's teacher, a nice girl named Lucy. whom I had only seen once. Well, before I sat down, wanting channel now, video watch style. Noah saw me across the room and ran over to me. He threw his arms around my neck hard, and I felt that hug like a life raft. Grandma, Guy, you've come, he said. Now, I'm true there. Orders? And I just replied, Lynn, of course I came. My love, Nina, whenever you need me, I'll be here. But he was strange. I squeezed my fingers tightly, looked around as if I didn't feel good there. I asked if everything was okay, and he just shrugged. When we tried to talk, a waiter interrupted us, asking if he wanted juice. Noah refused. Now, how? He said he wanted to go home. I got up, went to the main table, tried to get closer to Daniel. He was taking pictures with Vanessa. The two laughed, toasted, exchanged glances on the cover of a magazine. I waited for a moment when he was free, touched him on the shoulder and said, Daniel, Noah. He turned his face, saw me, gave a short smile and said, How no knelt. I about to the boy now. Hi. Mom, I'm glad you came. Until Dad said, See much to see where, and I have such an archie. Then we'll talk. Okay? After, as if I were any guest. As if it were an exaggeration to want 2 minutes of my own son's attention. Vanessa looked at me for a second. Just a second. Then he turned his face, as if I were an unwanted presence. He didn't even say, Good afternoon, nor welcome. He didn't ask. Morning, thus dodged. I went back to the table with Noah and Lucy. I took a deep breath. I ran my fingers over the daisy brooch and held my pain like someone holding a cracked crystal, knowing that if I squeeze it too tight, it breaks. Lunch was served. I asked the waiter if the children's plate had been separated, as I asked by email and message. Noah has a seafood allergy. Since I was little, but the waiter looked confused and said he had not received any special instructions. I was alert. When the dish arrived, I discreetly lifted the lid of the tray, and there they were, chopped shrimp, mixed in rice, almost invisible. I called the waiter. He said firmly, that dish could kill my grandson. He apologized, said he would change it. But there was no longer any meal ready without seafood. I took Noah's backpack, took out some fruit and a sandwich that I took as a precaution, and served it to him right there. Lucy looked at me carefully and said quietly, He kept saying he was scared all the time, but I thought it was just nervous. I couldn't understand it. Everything was so wrong, cold, unconnected. It was not a marriage. It was a staged spectacle, and I was a badly positioned extra. But I still didn't know what was hidden underneath it all, because it was right there, in the middle of that flowery room. When else, between forced smiles and poisoned dishes, that Noah looked at me and said, Grandma, you didn't see what's under the table, did you? And then that's when it all started to fall apart. Can you imagine what a 7-year-old saw, and that no adult has been able to notice? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about now. When Noah looked at me and said that phrase, Grandma, I looked on. They did some too. You didn't see what's under the table, did you? I said, my whole body was alert. He was sitting very close to me, with his sweaty little hand clinging to the hem of my dress. His look, it was not mischief, nor playful. And no, it was fear, real fear, one of those that we feel deep in our chest, even without understanding why. But before I bent down to see anything, my heart jumped and my mind went back in time, because I looked at Vanessa's face, laughing with the photographers at the buffet, posing as a magazine star. Nano Chantacha, Simo Karsti show. And for a moment, later I saw, part two, I felt angry, not out of jealousy, not out of comparison, but because I had seen the opposite of that. And who knew Emily? You know what I'm talking about. Emily was the kind of person who spoke softly, but who filled the room with affection. She never had heavy makeup, no high heels, no empty words. She was one of those who listened to us until the end, even when the conversation was not funny. She called me mother with such sincere tenderness that I sometimes forgot that she was not of blood. I remember the day she called me for the first time, crying, her voice breaking, asking for help. Interviews. Mom. Noah, once stop crying. Can you come here? I'm so lost. Is it? I ran, without even taking off my apron, and when I arrived, she was sitting on the floor with the baby in her arms, exhausted, but trying to sing a lullaby. I hugged her. I took Noah on my lap and sang with her. That day sealed an invisible covenant between us. Since then, I've watched Emily become a mother with a rare sweetness. She made homemade puree, took Noah to the park, and called me just to tell me when he said a new word. On Sundays, we all had lunch together here at home. Roast chicken, mash, saffron rice. No. She always helped wash the dishes, even though I told her not to worry. Sometimes she would hug me out of nowhere and say, "Thank you for everything." The last time he hugged me was on a Friday night. She came to pick up Noah, who had spent the afternoon with me. She had the flu, but she didn't want to miss him. She hugged me tightly and said, "See you Sunday?" Mom, how? On Saturday, she went out in a car to buy Noah a birthday present, and he never returned. No. The accident was reported in the newspaper, but what didn't come out in the newspaper was the silence that took over our house. Daniel locked himself in his room for days. Noah would call for his mother in the middle of the night, and I would sit by the bedside. Said by, smoothing her fever-soaked hair and crying out, "Wadam." The funeral was small, low-key, as she would have wanted. Oh, calm. I stood there, looking at that photo on top of the coffin, wondering how the world had the courage to move on without her, without Donald Dento. And now I was there, at that party, set up, surrounded by well-dressed people, with a blue dress that no longer matched the occasion. I looked at Vanessa with her calculated smiles and felt an almost physical pain in my chest, not because she was beautiful or confident, but because she didn't know the love that once lived there, because she didn't know Emily. And in that instant, wow, I understood why my heart was so restless. It wasn't just the contempt, nor the cold invitation, nor the wrong food. It was the feeling that it was all a farce, as if love had been replaced by appearance, and as if Noah, my little one, is feeling it too. That's why I'm here opening my heart, Leo, telling my story with every piece that still hurts. If you're there listening, if this is somehow reaching your heart, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, because I still have a lot to tell you. And maybe, in my words, you will find a little piece of your story, too. I took a deep breath. I looked at Noah. Nisil. I lowered it slowly, as if afraid of finding a hole in the ground. And I saw it. I saw it. But have you ever stopped to think about what a 7-year-old child could have seen, and that all adults preferred to ignore? Because what was under that table was not just an object. It was a message, a warning, a silent warning that someone there was not who he said he was. And it was at that moment that my mission as a grandmother changed completely. Do you want to know what it was? So get ready, because I'm going to tell you. Noah has always been a talkative, curious boy, full of questions and funny observations. Even after the loss of his mother, he could still laugh easily, make innocent jokes, and make up stories with the dolls we keep in the toy bag here at home. But that afternoon, there in the decorated hall, he was silent, sitting in the chair next to me, with my feet dangling in the air and the red cart in my hand. I just stared at the floor. He didn't complain about anything. He didn't throw tantrums. He just cringed, as if he wanted to disappear. That worried me. I ran my hand through his hair and asked, "Is everything okay, my love?" He nodded his head in affirmation, but his eyes said something else. I tried to distract him, to start a conversation. I told him about our plan to go to the beach next weekend, the fish he had drawn at school, the new cookie recipe I wanted to try with him. But Noah barely answered. He just pushed the red cart over the edge of the table, slowly, with a forced concentration, as if that was the only safe thing in that place. It was then that the waiter appeared, bringing the dishes, one for me, one for Noah, and one for Teacher Lucy, who still kept us company. The moment the plate was placed in front of him, Noah stiffened. No, he stared at the food for a few seconds, and then pushed the plate away. With a delicate but decisive hand, she said softly, almost whispering, "I can't eat that, Grandma. There's something bad there." My whole body froze. At the time, nearly and soon, the only thing I thought was, "Oh my God, the shrimp." I picked up the fork carefully and started stirring the rice. And there they were. And so tiny, mixed with grains, almost invisible. chopped shrimp. Noah has been allergic since he was a baby. Once he had contact. He turned purple and fainted. He ended up in the hospital in a hurry. Since then, we have been extremely careful. And who had sent a message in advance to the buffet staff, who made the risk clear, now saw, before my eyes, a dish that could have put his life in danger. I got up from the table slowly, my heart racing. I excused myself and walked to the kitchen, which was on the other side of the room. I sat down. I kodyap ayam. The ground felt soft, as if I were walking on a cloud. I arrived at the service door, rang twice. One of the assistants attended me. I said I needed to talk to the chef, that it was urgent. I was met with some disdain. Some curious glances turned to me. The lady at table 12, who was bothering me. The chef appeared. A tall man in a clean apron and a hurried look. I explained everything calmly. He said that my grandson was allergic. That I had sent the information. That dish was wrong. He looked at me with disinterest and replied, "The cards all came in writing?" Ma'am, nobody warned me about allergies. We serve the standard children's menu. I insisted. I said I had proof of the messages. The emails. He shrugged and said, if it's not in the official orders, we follow what was printed on you. I returned to the table feeling a lump in my throat. Lucy looked at me worriedly. Noah was already eating the sandwich from home that I had brought in my backpack. I thanked in silence for having followed my instinct to always be forewarned. I sat down slowly, took a deep breath. The room was noisy now, full of laughter and toasting glasses. No one realized what almost happened there. None of the bride and groom came to us. Nobody asked anything. But I knew, deep down, that this had not been just any mistake. Those buffet chips. Someone had sent it. Someone authorized it. And I began to suspect that there was something bigger behind it. It wasn't just coldness. It was something premeditated, an attempt to erase my presence and, even worse, put Noah at risk. I looked again at Vanessa, who was now dancing in the middle of the room in a tight dress, surrounded by friends, and for a moment I was sure she didn't just want to be my son's new wife. She wanted to erase any trace of what came before her. And that's when I understood that I could no longer just be a spectator. Can you imagine what a woman is capable of doing when you see your grandson in danger and find out that no one there is paying attention? Because from that moment on, I decided to pay attention to everyone, and what I discovered right after. It was even worse, because Noah didn't just see what was under the table. He knew who had put it there, and I was about to hear the name. Noah was still strange, and his silence told me more than any scream. He still played with the red car, but in a restrained way, as if he was trying to hide inside that toy. I watched him from the side, not wanting to press. My heart was still racing from the confusion with the plate. There was something in that place that didn't fit, like a crooked piece in an old puzzle. It was then that the cart slipped out of his hand and fell to the ground. He tapped the leg of the table with a dry sound, which I stopped honest. Noah bent down to pick it up. Nosh. And when he came back, well, his eyes were wide. Now, he stood for a few seconds, taking a deep breath, as if he had seen a ghost. Then, what I did, walk on an oil, but found it still is too. In a low and trembling voice, she said in my ear, now, Grandma, look under the table. How? At the same time, my whole body tensed. I felt a shiver rise up my back. I looked around. No one was paying attention. I took my bag, put it on my lap, and, pretending to look for something, leaned in slowly. Wise, nudged to go. I lifted the towel carefully. Why, that's when I saw it. There, and here. Night in town down to say you'll go Jackady. I fancy I do out a doctor. Taped discreetly to the underside of the table was a small piece of folded paper. My heart was beating so hard that I felt it in my neck. I reached out and pulled out the note. I unfolded carefully, without making a sound, with trembling fingers. And what was written there? It made me forget to breathe. Table 12. Add shrimp to the child's meal. The lyrics were hurried, but clear, round, feminine, like someone who writes in a hurry, but knows what she is doing. I read it once, then another. I am not guilty. My hands started sweating. My chest tightened as if there was a stone pushing inside. That could not be a mistake. It was not a distraction. It was no coincidence. Someone someone there had given the order to put a deadly ingredient in my grandson's food. The feeling that followed was hard to explain. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, as if the ground was gone, and I was floating in an emptiness that screamed, "You're not safe here." I closed the note calmly, put it in my bag, and looked at Noah. He stared at me with eyes full of fear. I held his hand tightly. I caressed his face, kissed his forehead, and said softly, "Let's get out of here now." I got up slowly. I grabbed his backpack and my bag. Lucy, the teacher, looked at us, confused. I nodded, asking for silence. "I'll explain it to you later," I whispered. She nodded, respectfully. As I walked across the hall, with Noah by my side, I realized that no one was seeing us. They were all too busy filming the couple's first toast, laughing out loud, taking pictures. And that hurt me, because I screamed inside, but no one would listen. We left through the side door, which led to the garden. The fresh air helped me breathe again. Noah leaned against me. His shoulders slumped. We went to a wooden bench under a tree. I sat with him on my lap, as I did when he was still wearing a diaper. And there I stayed for a while, feeling the wind shake his hair and trying to understand how someone can have the courage to plan something so cruel. And this is where I need to tell you something important. As much as this story is already seeming heavy, the hardest thing was yet to come, because At that moment, sitting with Noah in my arms, I had no idea that this note was just the beginning of a much bigger and much darker revelation than I could have imagined. And when I tell you who wrote that note, you will understand why some truths take time to come to light. But when they come, they destroy everything around them. Have you ever suspected someone? But were you afraid to confirm? That's right. Me too. But not for long. Because the truth came. And it came straight to me. Wow. No. I sat for a while with Noah on my lap, well, listening to the distant sound of the party, continuing as if nothing had happened. The laughter, the toasts, the songs. Inside, Nina, Kakstedel, Anornigir, and Karmstal. They celebrated a new union. Out here, I tried to keep my grandson alive. I took a deep breath. I kissed his forehead and said, "Oh, stay here with me just a little longer. My love, Grandma needs to do something." I got up slowly and walked back, not to the hall, but to the service area. I know the backstage of the parties well. I was a waitress when I was young. I've seen how orders circulate behind the scenes of places like that. I went straight to the side of the building until I found an open door through which trays and pans came out. Oh, a strong smell of food mixed with disorganization and haste. I waited for the right waiter to pass by, the same one who had served us. He was young. He must have been in his early 20s, wearing a white apron and a tired look. When she saw me, well, she was already justifying herself. Ma'am, sorry again for before. We have already ordered the plate to be removed. I interrupted calmly. I opened the bag, took out the ticket and handed it to him. He read it, and his face lost all color. "My God," he said quietly. "I thought it was just a last-minute change." The woman handed me this note quickly and said it was to adjust the child's plate. He didn't talk about allergies or anything. "What woman?" I asked, my voice firm. She had her hair tied up, pulled back, navy blue dress, tight, light brown hair. I think my stomach turned. It was exactly how Vanessa was dressed. He continued, "No," nervously. "I swear I only followed what they were told. I wouldn't do anything to hurt a child. Ma'am, if I knew." I shook my head, trying to stay calm. "Monsieur Chair, Monsieur de Paul Barchter Huisti." I held the ticket back, folded it, and put it away. I looked him right in the eye and said, "Ma, I believe in you, but now I need you to remember. Did she deliver this note directly into your hands?" He nodded. Yes, personally. He said he was from the organization of the event. Did she wear a ring? Yes, I did. Oh. I took a deep breath and thanked him. I returned by the same route, without making a fuss. Every step I took felt heavier, but not out of fear. Absolutely. That was not imagination. It was not an exaggeration. Someone, that woman, deliberately wanted to put my grandson at risk. I wanted to move away, silence myself. destroy me in the most subtle and cruel way anyone could, eliminating the only true link I had left. No, no, there are pains that we don't scream about. We keep it. Swallows. He hides it in his chest so he doesn't collapse in front of others. But when danger knocks on our door, or, worse, when he sits at the same table as you, instinct changes. I was no longer just a hurt grandmother. I was a lioness awake. And if you've ever had to swallow hard as you watch an injustice happen right before your eyes, if he ever had to feign calm while inside, everything screamed. Comment here with a DL. I know how it is, and I understand you, because only those who have lived this kind of silence know the weight it carries. I went back to where Noah was waiting for me in the garden. He was sitting, barefoot and his backpack resting on his leg. When he saw me, he opened a shy smile, as if asking with his eyes if he can breathe again. I sat next to him and held his little hand tightly. He said nothing. I just stood there, with the crumpled note in my hand and my heart in pieces, because the truth could no longer be ignored. And more than that, it needed to be faced. But how to confront a woman who now bore my surname? How to unmask someone who everyone there was willing to applaud? Because it was trying to answer these questions that I made the most unexpected decision of my life. A choice that changed everything, including the course of that marriage. And that's what I need to tell you now. I sat down again next to Noah under the tree, and he leaned against me with a sigh of relief. The afternoon wind made the leaves dance above our heads, as if the outside world didn't know what was about to happen. I looked at his little face, so small, it can't say you are an ahaka. So confident that Grandma was there and that everything would be okay. But I knew that everything was not okay, and maybe it wouldn't. Lucy arrived shortly after, with a glass of juice in her hand and a worried look. She was so young. He had the sweetness of someone who still believes that things are settled with conversation. He sat next to me carefully and spoke softly. Marilyn, Al, what's going on? You're so pale. Heighten. It took me a few seconds to answer. My eyes were fixed on the hall. Monsieur subduing. In the distance, where the lights were already flashing and the guests were starting to get up from the tables to take pictures with the bride and groom. Vanessa twirled in the middle of the room as if she were a princess in a window. Daniel smiled, not imagining the shadow that hovered behind that navy blue dress. Lucy, I murmured, my voice breaking. Take care of him, please. She widened her eyes. Did something happen to Noah? I shook my head, and, without looking at it directly, I put my hands. Not yet, but it could have happened, and in not going to let it happen. Now, I need to do the right thing. She understood. He asked no more. She just pulled Noah close and started talking to him with discreet affection. I got up slowly, like someone carrying a suitcase full of memories on his back. I kept the note in my coat pocket. The paper now seemed to weigh like a stone. I walked back in the direction of the hall. Every step was a mourning, because I knew, he knew, that when he crossed those doors again, there would be no turning back. I was no longer just a mother. He was a witness, and more than that, a threat. People were still laughing. The cheerful songs played in the background. The waiters served sparkling wine with strawberries, and no one noticed the woman in the light blue dress passing through the back of the room with red eyes and trembling mouth. I stopped for a moment near the main table and looked at my son. Oh, Daniel, Alice, my boy. It was him that I thought about during all those years when I stayed up all night with a fever, that I sold my jewelry to pay for school, that I gave up on rebuilding my life after Richard passed away. Daniel was my everything, and now he was there, taking pictures with a woman who tried to kill her own son. Do you know what it's like to look at your own blood and no longer be able to recognize it? It is a dull pain, a blow that does not make noise, but that cracks inside. There, how did, at that moment, Anicia, at that moment, I felt that I had already lost him, because even if he listened to me, even if he believed me, something between us had already been broken, maybe a long time ago. Maybe the day Emily died. Maybe the day he decided to move me away slowly, with cold invitations and long silences. But one thing I knew. As much as I lost the last thread of affection, he could still feel for me. I couldn't be silent, because Noah's life was worth more than any semblance of a happy family. I stopped in the side hallway, leaned against the wall, and took a deep breath. I closed my eyes and asked for strength, not to make a scandal, not to get revenge, but to tell the truth with the dignity I had left. And when I opened my eyes, I saw it. Vanessa, Odysseus, Vanessa, on the other side of the room, laughing and hugging a friend. Oh, her head thrown back, her tight dress, her glass of champagne in her hand. She had no idea what was coming, but I already knew, because deep in my heart, I had understood something that changes everything. When the truth knocks on the door, she doesn't need to scream. Just open your hand and show it. And that's exactly what I decided to do. You're ready to hear what happened when I called my son to talk, and he finally listened to what I had to say? Because it was at that moment that everything started to fall apart. I walked into the hall like one crossing a minefield. Each step was a warning that there would be no turning back. The air was dense, loaded with too sweet perfume and too many fake smiles. I felt my heart beating in the rhythm of the silence that grew inside me. But the face, Manonian, the face I kept serene, because a woman like me learns, over time, to carry chaos inside without dropping a single trace of dignity on the outside. The music was playing loudly, and Daniel was surrounded by guests, laughing, toasting, shaking hands. Vanessa by her side, impeccable. I sound, the two seemed to live a party of their own, and maybe it was a party built without me, without Emily, no, without truth. I approached the main table. I didn't ask for permission. He doesn't smile. Well, I just reached out and handed over the note. Read on. Daniel took the paper with the lightness of someone who thinks he will find a message of affection. But as his eyes scanned the handwriting, his face changed. First confusing, then seriously, and finally pale. He looked up and stared at me. He said nothing. I didn't scream either. I didn't cry. I just let the question come out of my mouth like a biting breeze. Did you know that? He took a long time to respond. He swallowed. Wine, hein. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Ah. And at that moment, wow, I saw it. I saw in his eyes that he didn't know, but I also saw that he got lost. He lost his way, lost his sense, lost his gaze on his own son. Daniel was always good at following the expectations of others, except for those that involved listening to the heart. When Emily died, he threw himself into the work. The appearances and the background was yearned out on it now. I don't think he ever knew how to take care of a child alone. And that's where Vanessa came in. Beautiful, articulate, no, decisive, no. She didn't just charm him, she filled a void he didn't have the courage to look at. But at what price? Because now, there, with the paper in his hands, he realized that he had put his son in the wrong hands. I took a deep breath and added, if I hadn't come today, or not, Noah could be in the hospital, or worse. Daniel looked around, perhaps realizing for the first time that all that decoration, all of those guests, all that glitter, they meant nothing in the life of a boy. I didn't wait for answer. Mom. I turned my back and walked back outside. I crossed the room under curious eyes, but I didn't care, because there, for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. No, say, there are times in life when we have to choose between keeping the apparent peace or standing up for what is right, even if it costs us what little love we still have left. And if this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, how? Help me carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. This makes more difference than you think, because telling this story is not easy. But maybe, by telling no, I will be able to heal a piece of the pain that remained. And at that moment, sitting again next to Noah and Lucy on the park bench, I knew why the truth had been told. But the silence that followed, it was even more cruel, because as I watched the sky darkening among the trees, a question hammered inside me. What else would that woman have the courage to do? Now that she had been unmasked, I was sitting again with Noah. His hand on mine. Nidio. Small and warm, as a reminder that, despite everything, there was still love worth protecting. The wind was beginning to change. The trees rustled in a lower tone, as if nature also sensed what was to come. Noah leaned his head on my shoulder and sighed. I felt that he was calmer. Perhaps because he saw me firm, or perhaps because we did not yet understand the gravity of what we had escaped. The side door of the hall opened slightly, and out of it came a girl whom I had only glimpsed during the ceremony. Light pink dress, low heels, loose hair, and anxious eyes. She walked fast, looking around, as if looking for something she lost and fears she won't find. When he saw me, he stopped. He took a deep breath and came to me. hesitantly. Mrs. Howard Tall. Marilyn? I nodded. No, it you were. Looking up. Oh, im Gloria? A dead, she said. No. Her voice trembling. Vanessa's sister. No doubt for Tom. At that moment, lo, everything inside me hardened. I didn't know what to expect. A request that I not cause a scandal. A blind defense of the sister. A new coup. But what I saw there, it was something else. Gloria seemed conflicted. Well, her hands clenched, her eyes teary. Nice and how. She sat next to me, as if she didn't know if she could or not, and spoke almost in a whisper. Why, I didn't know. Oh, I saw what happened. I heard some comments. You showed a note, didn't you? I showed it, I replied firmly. Nan, do you know who wrote it? I have a good idea, he said. No, looking straight into her eyes. It was then that the girl lowered her head, took a deep breath, and blurted out, I was the one who handed it to the waiter. The world was suspended for a second. But, I didn't know what it was. I swear on my life. Vanessa, wow. She called me before the ceremony. She was in a hurry. Now, said it was just an adjustment for the buffet. That they had mistaken the child's meal, and that this note had to be delivered discreetly so as not to cause confusion. I haven't even read it. I didn't even question it. She trembled. Lies. I could see that he spoke sincerely. Well, and there, for a moment, my dear Gutas, that's you. I saw in her something that no one there had given me until now. Regret. When I heard what happened, I felt nauseous. He continued, Now, I should have asked. I should have read it. I was used. Now, I put my hand on hers. She froze, surprised. You went the first to be used by her, dear Mandova, and maybe it's not the last. But today, you chose not to be silent, and that changes everything. She nodded. No, her eyes full. He looked at Noah. Why? Who was now dozing off with his head in my lap, as if nothing was happening. I never imagined. Wow. She's always been controlling. But that's another thing. I took a deep breath. The knot in his chest was beginning to loosen. Not because the danger has passed, but because, for the first time, someone on the other side saw what I saw. You know, sometimes life puts us in front of such hard truths that we start to doubt our own sanity. He begins to wonder, am I exaggerating? Am I the one who is seeing too much? But when an unexpected voice confirms what your heart already knew, something inside us is rebuilt. And if you've ever lived that kind of silence, that doubt that hurts, and then you were saved by a little truth, comment here with an I, understand? Or it's true, because in these moments, we realize that we are not alone. Gloria stood up and hugged me in a shy but sincere way. If you need me, I speak, I confirm everything. I saw her giving it to me. I thanked him with a wave. She walked away, no, returning to the hall with the uncertain step of someone who had perhaps, at that moment, broken with her own sister. Now, I stood there with Noah, feeling my heart warm a little. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. And now, how bittersweet. I had witness, but the most surprising thing was yet to come, because when Daniel reappeared later, with his eyes full of questions, he told me something that turned my world around once again. Something that Vanessa hid, not only from me, but also his. Can you imagine what it would be? Because, at that moment, her castle began to crack, and what came out from behind it was even dirtier than I expected. I sat there, with my back straight and my heart in leaps and bounds, watching from afar as Daniel approached Vanessa and called her out of the room. The way he touched her on the arm, with that firmness that only a frightened parent has, told me that, at last, he was willing to listen. Not me, but the truth. Minds. They left through the side door. The sound of the party was muffled for a moment. The guests continued to be distracted, taking pictures, laughing, ignoring the small implosion that was happening in the corner of that perfectly decorated place. Meanwhile, Lucy remained next to me with Noah, who slept peacefully, with his head against her leg. Mad, nice older, do you know? She ran her hand through his hair, as if cradling what is most precious to her. It was curious. Lucy was not family. It was just my grandson's tutor. And yet, she was the only one who showed real care, without obligation, without facade. Mylene. The door opened again. I saw Vanessa come back first. The red eyes, the tense face. It was not sadness. It wasn't guilt. It was anger. Anger at having been confronted. Oh, anger at no longer having control of the narrative. Man. And when he passed me, he stopped. He looked into my eyes and said with venom in his words, "You never liked me. Are you really going to destroy your child's life for a mistake?" I just stared at her, steadfast. He didn't need to say anything, because at that moment, I wasn't there to discuss. He was there to protect. Daniel followed close behind. His face said it all. Confused, tense, but also with a glow of lucidity that I had not seen for a long time. He didn't look at Vanessa. He walked straight to our table. "Mom," she said, in a low voice, almost begging, "I need to take Noah to the room now. He needs to rest." I looked at him as if it were the first time. That was the man I had created with so much effort. The same one who had left me aside so many times. Who walked away without explanation. Who chose the easy way. But there, nice and wow, in front of me, I stood down, all uncomfortably down, was the father, Nissu. The father who needed to relearn to love. Today, he stays with me. When now, Africana. I replied, "My own, do not touch this, Daniel." Without hesitation, Neon. Daniel looked at Lucy. She had her hand holding Noah's tight, and she didn't let go for a second. Whoa. He took a deep breath. He swallowed his pride, and he retreated. He said nothing more. He just turned around and slowly returned to the room, as if carrying on his shoulders a weight that he finally began to recognize. It was there that I felt it. The tables had turned. For the first time, he saw me. No, not only as a mother, no, but as someone who fought for his son. His son, you know, there are certain memories that don't leave us, and no matter how many years pass, they come back with smell, with color, with the same tightness in the chest. This moment, it will be one of them. The way my son, in short, Ma, chose silence instead of omission, the way that woman looked at me without being able to hide what it was. Lucy's soft touch on my grandson's hand. What about you? Have you ever experienced something like this? A scene that was engraved in your soul forever? If you've been through something similar, or know someone who has, share it with me here in the comments. Sometimes, opening this treasure chest of memories makes us feel less alone. Night was slowly falling. The party inside was already beginning to unravel, like a house of cards in the wind. But I knew the biggest revelation of that night was yet to come, because Vanessa might have lost control of the lie, but she still hid a secret that would bring everything down, including what was left of her own marriage. It could have all ended there, with Daniel stepping back, Vanessa swallowing her anger, and me walking home with Noah in my arms. But life sometimes reserves chapters that we don't even imagine will still be read. And that night, there was one more page waiting for us. I was still sitting, watching the last movements of the room, when a tall, thin young man with thick glasses and a light blue shirt approached carefully. It was Andrew, cousin on my late husband's side. Someone I hadn't seen since Daniel's own christening. A discreet young man, the type who observes more than he speaks. Mrs. Marilyn. Sorry to bother. I heard part of the story, and I wanted to know. He scratched the back of his head, as if he didn't know whether or not to get involved. Do you really want to prove what happened? I looked at him calmly. I don't need to prove it to myself, but maybe other people need to see it. He nodded. I work with it. I'm responsible for the security system for large events. There, in Savannah, this resort has cameras everywhere. I can ask for access to Tode's images. It may help. At that moment, I could only think of one thing. The truth doesn't need much. Only someone with the courage to press play. Minutes later, Andrew was already in contact with the resort's management. The manager authorized it, still without fully understanding what was going on. Daniel, quieter than ever, stood beside Andrew, his hands in his pockets and his shoulders hunched. Gloria, Neo, pale as an overwashed sheet, trembled beside me. The small projection room at the back was occupied by some guests, curious, confused, and there, live so on the big screen. The story began to be told without a word being spoken. Vanessa appeared clearly in one of the images, next to the reception table. She was wearing the navy blue dress, talking to Gloria. He gestured in a hurry, handed over a folded paper. Me looked to the sides. Gloria hesitantly, wow, received the note and walked to the kitchen. At another angle, the waiter took the paper from her hands and returned to the service area. It was all too clear. Everything recorded. I know it. Gloria began to cry softly. No, shoulders shaking. How? Face in hands. She lied to me. He used my trust. Nobody said anything. The silence inside was different. It was, no doubt. It was the silence of someone who saw too much to deny. Daniel was pale, his eyes fixed on the screen. When the video ended, he looked at me, and in that look, I saw a request for forgiveness that might never be put into words. But it was there. Vanessa entered the room soon after, pulled by one of Daniel's aunts. He looked at the group, now, at the screen, at the faces. He tried to maintain his posture, but his body was already denouncing the end of the farce. That doesn't prove anything, he said. Now, how? His voice cutting but weak. I just asked her to help with an exchange of dishes. You are exaggerating. But no one answered. I didn't even need to, because her voice was no longer heard. You? It only echoed in the midst of the collective contempt that now surrounded her. She tried to leave, but the looks, the looks, they accompanied her like glued shadows, and I was there, with my hands clasped in my lap. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't have to, because sometimes the strongest justice is the silence of those who do not shout. But what came next? It was even more devastating than the images, because Andrew, still digging through the archives, found something that no one expected. An audio, a recording captured unintentionally, a forgotten lapel microphone, turned on during the preparation of the ceremony, a conversation between Vanessa and someone from the staff. And what she said, everything changed once and for all. Can you imagine what it would be? Because after that audio, no one else had the courage to defend what had no defense. He walked slowly, as if he felt the different ground under his feet. The crowd murmured still behind us, but I couldn't hear anything else but the sound of his approaching footsteps. Daniel, my son, the boy who once ran through the halls of our house, with his knees scraped and his heart whole, now stood before me with his face broken with regret. He knelt down. He knelt down, as if handing over his weapons, as if admitting that he finally saw it. And when he took my hand, it was not with guilt, nor with despair. It was with that tenderness that only children have when they remember where they came from. Mom, he said. Aye. His voice low, firm. So tired. I let her in too much, and I left you outside. There was nothing rehearsed in that speech, no attempt to justify himself. It was just what it was. And sometimes the pain just needs that, to be recognized. I looked at him. I, I looked at him. I took a deep breath, and I answered the way I learned to live. The love that pretends to be love ends up revealing who is who. He lowered his head, ah, as if these words had gone deeper than any scream. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble, because when we carry silence for so long, we learn that there is a kind of force that doesn't make noise. Daniel stood up. Now, he looked around. How the hall was now just a remnant. Bouquets dropped, empty glasses, disconcerted guests, and there, what is stood still wide. In a corner, Mayor Vanessa, you don't Sarah, I'm Stitcher, du sitting alone. How? Her dress crumpled, her bouquet lying on the floor. She no longer shone, and he no longer seduced. It was just what it had always been. Now, without the makeup of illusion, Daniel cleared his throat. Ma, down, and in a tone that did not ask permission, he just said, "The ceremony is over." The voices ceased. Some stood up. No. Others pretended not to hear. But everyone understood. Wow, that party was over. Vanessa didn't say anything. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. She just got up, straightened her hair. No calm. Wanted to not sob. Took her bag and left, without looking back, as if she knows that the show ended and she was no longer the protagonist. I only had wiped down. Wanted to see the car. I looked at Noah. Till then, Anari, Wadersen, on Sitalokabayatabat, and felt a weight leave my shoulders. It was not relief. It was dignity. But that night, Vilharnal, before we returned home, Daniel would call me to talk. And what would he tell me about the months leading up to that wedding? It would make me realize that all this was only the surface of an even deeper truth, a truth that involved secrets, manipulations. Wow, when I have silted your sector, Walter, and something he never had the courage to tell me until then. The next morning, the resort was unrecognizable. Those lights that had shone until recently were now out. The toppled arrangements, the silent corridors, the laughter transformed into echoes of something that was never true. The party had turned into ruin, and the ruin, at last, had shown what each one really was. Vanessa left in the middle of the night. No one knows if she asked for a car, drove alone, or simply disappeared into the night. But when the sun rose, she was no longer part of that scenario. The suite that was previously prepared with champagne and petals now had only an abandoned key at the reception counter. Gloria remained. She looked at the ground, embarrassed, as someone who carries a mistake that she cannot justify. Well, she saw me at breakfast, and for the first time in that whole story, someone came to me without haste or forced excuses. She said, "Non, no care," her voice breaking. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry." I held her hand for a moment. I squeezed lightly. Wow. Sometimes regret comes from the right place. Daniel appeared soon after, with Noah on his lap. The boy was still sleeping. curled up on his father's shoulder. Daniel's eyes were red, but not from fatigue, for the truth he finally saw. Mom, he said, am going to need some time. I, far from all that, yes, to understand who I am and what I let happen. I understand. I replied. No, but he can't afford it. No. Daniel looked at his son and then at me. That's why I want him to stay with you. Those words hit deeply, not out of pride, but because I knew that, for the first time, Daniel was putting his son first. Lucy appeared soon after. Her eyes were also swollen. But there was a sweet firmness to them, a quiet strength, if you want. Now, sit down, down. I can help on weekends, in the tasks, whatever you need. I just smiled. Sometimes the right people reveal themselves in the midst of the storm. Resort employees whispered in the hallways. The story had already become a trail of whispers through the corners of Charleston. Vanessa, how, once so well received in the city's social circles, was now shunned. The wedding now consumed in the Nostalgian farm, which was supposed to be the event of the year, became a legend in a low voice, told in pieces in coffee shops, markets, beauty salons. We returned home in silence. Noah, Kaya, first Easter day, in the back seat, hugging his red stroller. Lucy in the seat next to her, and I driving with a heavy heart, but firm. There are pains that empty us, but there are others that clean, and on that way back, I felt both numb, the pain of what was, and the cleaning of what needs to go away. Anna, there are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. So, passively, if this story has reached you, enjoy this video and subscribe. Who knows? Maybe it will touch someone else who needs to remember that justice still exists, even if in silence. But what I didn't expect, it was to find something at home that would change everything again. A letter was tied. No sender. Folded between the pages of an old Bible that was on the living room shelf. And what he said inside. It was the missing piece to complete this puzzle. The house looked different, not because anything had changed in the furniture or curtains, but because there was a new piece in the air. Noah was running barefoot down the hallway, red cart in hand. He sissed, and a loose laugh I hadn't heard in a long time. It was as if the boy was relearning how to breathe. And so did I. The days passed slower. No. I turned out to do your works, and what me show. And instead of empty, they began to fill up with small good things. Lucy always came. Sometimes he brought corn cake, other times a new book for Noah. And when she entered the kitchen and tied her hair in a crooked bun, saying, "Today, in the one whose seasons," I just smiled. It was a type of care that is not taught. It is only offered. She helped Noah with chores, sat on the carpet with him to build pillow castles, and at night read stories in the calmest voice in the world. One day, oh, as she covered it with the blue duvet my mother had sewn decades ago, Noah looked at me and said with all the innocence in the world, "Well, that's such a Grandma, I'll just to let you know, I Captain Sarah Garcia. Aunt Lucy takes care of me like Mom did." My heart trembled. The throat closed for a moment, because there are words that we wait a lifetime to hear, and when they come from the mouth of a child, they carry the weight of the sacred. I just held his hand and kissed his forehead. He said nothing, because sometimes silence is more protective than any response. And it's curious how things settle down when we stop pushing. Daniel started to come back, first shy, bringing Noah and leaving quickly. Then he started to stay for a coffee, and a lunch, a conversation, until one Sunday he showed up with flowers, daisies, my favorites. He delivered with that awkward way of men who want to start over, but don't know where. I was blind, Mom, but now I see. I didn't have to ask him what he had seen, because the mere fact that he was there, with clean eyes and defenseless voice, said it all. Hun, how? We didn't talk about Vanessa, neither the party nor the tickets. The pain didn't need to be stirred. What I needed now was presence. And this one, this one, he brought. No. Sometimes life doesn't go back to what it was, but it can continue to be good in another way. And I tell you, from the heart, that you'll stay warm. Stay with me until the end of this story, because what seemed like an end point, he still had one last surprise in store, a revelation that came from where I least expected it. Do you believe that even pain can keep a gift hidden? So just wait to see what was inside that letter on the shelf. Because everything changed as the days went by. How I heard the winds change, not because I sought to know, but because certain truths, once spoken, are no longer hidden. Charleston is a small city for big hearts, and to even bigger lies. It was enough for the first whisper of history to run through the city's halls and cafes for Vanessa's image to begin to crack for good. She tried to cling to her appearance. He posted old photos on Instagram, from the time when he could still charm, with a rehearsed smile, vague captions, self-help phrases, even photos with Noah that she barely took when they were together, as if he wanted to rescue what had already been lost. But the comments left no doubt. No one forgot. No. Some local brands have started to move away. Contracts with event suppliers were quietly cancelled. The list of customers has decreased. There was a traditional restaurant that announced that she would no longer be part of the team of ceremonialists. And although she didn't say a word about what happened at that wedding, the city spoke for her. The truth moved slowly, but it reached every corner. And it didn't come with scandal. It came with that silence that embarrasses, that weighs more than a scream. Gloria, in turn, disappeared from the networks. I was told that he went to live with an aunt in Savannah. I don't judge. Sometimes leaving the scene is also a way to start over. Daniel, calmly and firmly, filed a request for civil annulment of the marriage. He said he didn't want to make a fuss or revenge. He just wanted to free himself from the mistake. He handed me the papers one afternoon, and I just said, "Sign with peace, not with anger." And me? I just watched. I didn't post hints. I didn't boast. I didn't spread the story as gossip, because I know when we plant silence with dignity, the harvest comes in the form of justice. I wasn't the one who destroyed anything. It was the lie itself that shattered itself. And deep down, I knew that time was doing its job. But what I didn't imagine, it was that forgotten letter on the living room shelf would bring not only a relief, but an answer that had been missing for years. Have you ever felt like a part of your story was missing? Mine arrived folded in a yellow envelope, with the smell of nostalgia. That afternoon, the Charleston sky seemed hand-painted. Wow. A golden hue dripped through the clouds, tinging everything with a calmness that only time brings. I was sitting on the porch, as I did on old Sundays, with my cup of peppermint tea in my hands. The steam rose slowly, as if he knew that there was no hurry there. Wash. Noah played in the garden with his red cart, inventing clues among the fallen leaves, as if he had never been afraid. And I just watched. So much has passed, and at the same time, it seems that everything stayed inside, quiet, but alive. I still remember the day Daniel was born, the smell of the blanket my mother made for him, the sleepless nights, the fevers, and the firsts. I remember when he called me my best friend, and I also remember the day I felt him start to move away. It wasn't all at once. It was in short silences, in dry answers, in choices that no longer included me. And I, like every mother who loves, stayed there, Paulon, from afar. But there, I thought of Emily Musham. I always think. Sometimes I talk to her alone while watering the plants. I tell how Noah grew up, how he still talks in his sleep, just like his father. And I also talk about the things that hurt, like that day at the salon when I narrowly, very narrowly, but Tom, Jesus, didn't lose our boy. Emily would have made a scandal. I know, but I did it my way. Silent. That you're not. No cabin. When I should kill Bumtow. And that's how the truth came. I thought of Vanessa. Yes, not angry, not anymore, but with the awareness that some people come into our lives to teach where we should never step again. She tried to turn off the light that connects me to Noah, tried to put herself where there was no root, and time has shown that no lie creates flowers. Lucy, Lucy, and outwollen. I still don't know the name that life will give to this sweet girl who entered our history quietly. But I know that if there's anyone in this world who looks at Noah with eyes to care, it's her. And that, for me, says it all. Because caring is not making noise. It is to be present even when no one sees. I don't feel victorious. I never felt it. It wasn't a dispute. It wasn't a game. It was just life. Hard, neat, imperfect, full of tests that I didn't ask for, but faced. And if I have any merit in all this, it was that I never betrayed myself, never having responded with venom, power, never have chosen hatred, even when it seemed easier. The truth sometimes takes time, but when it comes, it heals even what seemed impossible. When road, I'd still possible. And that's why I'm here. How? This late afternoon. Wow. With a light soul. Man, I. Not because I forgot what I experienced, but because I survived all this without losing what matters most. My peace. But before that day is over, I need to tell you what was in that letter hidden on the shelf. Because there, now, it was a piece of history that no one imagined. Oh, and that changed everything, even what I felt for myself. The envelope was brown, brown, without a sender, but with the handwriting that time does not erase from memory. The same letter as Emily, traced calmly down, with the M always rounder, as she had done since adolescence. Inside, einen Kappen, Brown, a letter written a few weeks before the accident. Ah, she said that if something happened to her, she wanted Noah to be raised near me, who saw me not as a mother-in-law, but as a second mother, and it ended like this. If I can't be, well, I know you'll be his lap in the world. I folded the paper with trembling hands, but with my whole heart. It was as if she had come back to give me the last word. And there I will be, Cassie. I knew I had kept my promise, even though I didn't know it existed. Wow. Today, my house has the noise of toys again, the smell of bread in the oven, the sound of laughter at dusk. Lucy and Daniel have been walking slowly, but together when Han and Noah, they said star. Talks. Oh, well, Noah now sleeps on the couch after dinner. Honestly, don't go bored to dinner. With the red stroller in his hand and his feet covered by the blanket I knitted so many years ago. Sometimes he murmurs my name in his sleep, and that, for me, is worth more than any ceremony, any apology. I was forgotten. I was left aside. But today, I am home again, and no one can take that away from me. If I learned anything from this story, it's that real love doesn't need to scream. He proves himself in care. He waits, endures, doesn't give up. And when the storm comes, it is the one that holds the structure upright. The weather, time is slow, but fair. He does not fail those who walk in silence, but with truth in their hearts. Every tear I kept was not in vain. Every gesture I failed to fight back built the bridge to this point. Sometimes winning is just about standing firm, not getting corrupted. If you stayed here with me, listening to this part of my life that almost no one knows, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's good to know that there are people on the other side who still believe in the power of real stories. If this video touched you, leave a like. For me, it's like a tight hug, one of those that we feel in our chest. And if you want to visit me again, subscribe here to the channel. When do, here. There's always a coffee ready and one more story to share. Write in the comments of which city you are listening to me. I love to imagine every corner of this country gathered in our piece of virtual coziness. Motherland, new God. My toes in here what? And it activates the bell. See? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story